Steve Spicer here. It's certainly an honour and a privilege to be able to introduce our speaker for this week's Virtual Drinks, Ian Taylor, who many of you will know and have seen his bio that I sent around. And so certainly, Ian, you have some great insights and some great stories of the path you've taken to date, and indeed some insights in terms of how the future may look. One of the things, Ian's coming to us from Dunedin, my old hometown, and it strikes me as a young fella growing up in Dunedin and going to school there that there are a lot of businesses leaving Dunedin and heading north, and indeed a lot of us who were educated there left to find work. And so it is certainly impressive and inspiring that you have actually managed, Ian, to stay in Dunedin and indeed have a world-class business servicing the world from Dunedin. So look, we were hoping to have you in Wellington in March for our conference, for the Capital Markets Forum. I remember sending you a note and saying, look, we were postponing, and I think you were walking through a LAX airport, which was very empty at the time. And I imagine the story today is slightly different to the one you may have given us pre-COVID. So look, handing over to Ian, welcome to this Friday Virtual Drinks. And I guess the one silver lining that COVID-19 has brought is that we can now say, being a Highlanders fan, that the Highlanders are unbeaten now for about 5 or 6 weeks in a row. So that's
doing very well.
Yeah.
Yes, well, so I guess I can start. I'd like to start actually with a Māori. I'll just share a screen here because we can do that. And I'm going to, there we go. And I'll just leave it as a kind of slideshow down the side here as well. But ko ngā tahua o tapawai e nānahi hei tu ira mō a popo. And, when we translate that to English, we sitting at the footsteps we lay down in our past create the paving stones of where we stand today. And that's kind of important in the Māori worldview. That vision means that the footsteps laid down by our ancestors are always in front of us. So at a time like this, and thinking about the business and the way we've all had to go online, this highway to the world, I'm reminded of this video, which we prepared when we sort of entered the competition to try to win Gigatown, but I think this is an important message.
In 1982, a state-of-the-art ship called Dunedin opened a refrigerated highway to Britain that supercharged the economy of a small country at the bottom of the world. Today, a new digital highway offers the city, after which that ship is named, the opportunity to build on the legacy left by its city's fathers.
So that's, it's kind of, I think that's a really important an important lesson to learn. That was a time when, basically, if you thought about it, our one of our great assets, the sheep that we grew, were just running around in farms and paddocks, and we shared that it was an internal market. Technology opened the highway to the world that allowed us to take that asset and sell it to the world. And New Zealand became one of the richest countries in the world because of technology, because of refrigerated shipping that opened up that world. So again, just sharing the screen again. Back, well, I guess it is 1989, I think, when we decided we were going to start a business in Dunedin and that we weren't going to leave. At that time now, as I look out at those footsteps that lay in front of me, we're Dunedin at the bottom of the world. The next stop from here was Antarctica. We had no idea how we were going to take on the world from here. But at this time, a guy called Sir Tim Berners-Lee at the other end of the world had invented a thing called the internet. Now, I mean, we weren't to know about that, but what Sir Tim did was created that highway to the world that we latched onto at very early days. And this is an example. This is a video we made some time ago, but this is 1 week of us using that highway. So here's our team working. Where were they? Up in Capri doing one of the yacht races. Meanwhile, over in Naples, again, one of our team from Dunedin in Naples, using that highway back to New Zealand to do the World Powerboat Racing over in Monaco the very same week, again linked to the highway back to New Zealand, where we're modelling these cars, all the racetracks, and delivering those to thousands, millions of people around the world. Same time in Wentworth, across there, and there we are operating the Gulf, and again, all using that highway to the world that has become so important to us now during COVID. And again, at the same week, and during that same week, you can see how long ago this video was made, but we were working with the teams in Christchurch. This guy here, Ben, is operating out of Queenstown through to Christchurch, working with architects up in Christchurch to create that vision of the way the world would look. So that's just a kind of quick overview, Dean, of the sort of power of that highway, which is making a difference to us, and it's what we're using now.
So when we think back to 1882, when the ship of Dunedin left the harbour and carrying frozen goods for the first time, we're sitting here today, and you're talking about the internet highway and the ability to connect with the world, and I suppose export our expertise. At the same time, we're sitting here in a world disrupted by COVID. There's a lot of talk around how New Zealand gets back to normal. I suppose a question around the economic reset that brings. I mean, I'd be keen to explore your thoughts around that in terms of, from a business perspective, but I think also in terms of a social and environmental impact aspect, in terms of what our new normal should look like, particularly given your insights around the Maori perspective in terms of how we should perhaps be thinking about this from a longer term perspective. 1882 was a long time ago. If we're rolling forward 50 to 100 years, what is the opportunity here? Is it the same as we had when that first ship left Dunedin Harbour?
Well, it's interesting. If I could just jump a little bit to the start of COVID, just as an example of, I'm sure everybody felt the impact on their business, and it happened really fast. I remember when I flew up to Abu Dhabi at the start of the year. I think it was something like January the 18th, somewhere around there. And it was one of our first golf tournaments of the year. And as I was transiting through Heathrow Airport, I read an article on page 5 of one of the newspapers there about a Chinese man who had died of an unknown disease in a place I'd never heard of, Wuhan. That was on my way to Abu Dhabi. That wasn't very long ago. So jump forward a few months now. This year, a few weeks actually, not months, this year was going to be the biggest year we had ever had in our history. We had signed all of the golf tournaments in the world. We had 80 golf tournaments. We just signed 2,500 games of Major League Baseball. That was to start this year. We were just finalising negotiations for 23 NFL games, including the Super Bowl. We had the America's Cup about to start in Italy, go through to Europe, and then come down to New Zealand. And the start of that year was January, February, March, the week of the 12th of March. I know because I flew up to Jacksonville for our first really big tournament, the Players' Championship, where we were rolling out all this new technology. So March the 12th was a Thursday, and I remember going out to the golf course, and everything worked beautifully. There was a bit of a warning because as we were going out to the golf course, there was word that one of the major leagues, I think it was NBA, had cancelled their upcoming tournaments. We got to the golf course, it was covered with people, all the golf was going, all the technology worked beautifully. We went back to our hotel, and at 9 o'clock that night, we got a text while we were having a glass of wine that tomorrow was cancelled. In fact, all golf was cancelled for the next 4 weeks. Then Major League Baseball was cancelled, NFL was cancelled. So in the space of half a glass of wine, our entire business for this year was gone. I remember we jumped on a plane the next day, flew back, went into complete self-isolation. This was before, we'd taken this very seriously. So we put ourselves in self-isolation coming back. But we'd also started to move people home at that time as well. So anyone who wanted to work from home moved home, all the gear went home. So when eventually the lockdown came, business was operating as normal. And it's been really interesting. You asked about the different, maybe the different, the difference that this kind of work environment made. One of the decisions we made as soon as we got back was, no matter what, no one would lose their jobs. Whatever happened, everyone, the first message we would give our staff was that you were all employed, and that would be at least until Christmas. So we felt it was really important. You know, we talk about people being important. You have to live that belief. It's such an easy thing to say, but people are really important. So the first thing we wanted to do is make sure that our staff didn't have to be looking over their backs, that no matter what happens, you are employed. Luckily, we had the reserves to do it, but we're just going to use all our reserves to guarantee that they had it, because we wanted to hit the ground running coming out. We wanted people not to be looking over their shoulders for the next 7 or 8 months. And we wanted them to view that one of the things we sent out to them was, look, here's our opportunity actually to do all of those things that you always thought we should be doing. Now let's do them. Let's catch up on those. We also changed their job descriptions. So the job description was moved to, you all have your jobs. You are all now working from home. A big part of your job description is you have to take care of yourself and those around you. That's what we are paying you to do. And so I think already we've seen over these 4 weeks or so, a massive change in the way our team is working. Productivity has gone through the roof, because no longer are people working thinking, I've got to be there turned on at 8:30. You know, if you want to take the kids for a walk, go for a walk. Start at 11, start at 3, start at whatever. And what we are seeing is an amazing productivity leap. And I think that's a sign for us in thinking about what is the nature of work in the future. That was a long answer.
No, it was a great example, and look, I must say, it speaks to the culture you have at Animation Research, and having had the privilege of walk through your offices, you do get the feeling that of the teamwork that's there. So look, I was keen, was you did talk about the fact you've come back, you're now sitting in New Zealand, you know, sport could open up at any moment, and you may not be able to get to where you need to get to. And yes. I know there's a great story around this and how quickly, I suppose the word that we're using is pivoted, but whether you pivoted or whether you just adjusted, but you got there very quickly, and you're now in a position to retain your position that you had in the market you're in. So talk us through that, because I think it's a great story.
Yeah, so one of the, you know, as we started to look at the challenges, first of all, we were really confident, you know, these contracts that we had signed were all really solid. They were 3-4 year contracts. So this was a bit of a hiccup. It could last, you know, we actually made our assumptions on our planning for staff and for everyone that we wouldn't be back before Christmas, you know, that sports would not be back before Christmas. And we made that decision within, you know, a week of getting home. So you shift it to what might be the worst case scenario, and you know that's looking more and more likely actually as we move forward. So knowing those contracts were there, knowing that we'd put all of our reserves in place to ensure that all staff retained their jobs, what we were looking at was making sure that when we hit Christmas or when we hit the new contracts, we'd really hit the ground running, and we would be delivering way in advance of what our clients would have been expecting this, you know, if COVID hadn't turned up. So this was our chance to leap forward. But as we looked at that, as things kind of moved forward, and then we saw the border lockdowns here, and we saw the chaos really happening in America, which, you know, is continuing. And one of the biggest eye-openers for us was that with this border lockdown, we might not be able to get to our markets. You know, so we all of these contracts require our people to be on site at the OBs for Major League Baseball or golf or cricket or whatever it is. So we have teams traveling the world. And so the huge risk immediately was we could lose all those if we couldn't get there. And you know, we have had enormous support from our clients anyway, but sooner or later, if we couldn't get there, they'd have to look at other options. So 2 weeks ago, we kind of called a Zoom call together and had this. It started off as this crazy call that said, you know what, worst case scenario, you're going to have to actually do this from your bedrooms. Could we operate live golf? Because the first one to come up is June. There's a golf tournament in June, and they will carry on from there. So by June, if we can't get people out of here or into the States, could we operate from Dunedin? So let me share with you what has happened with a group of people working remotely, working in their own lockdown bubbles, developing a remote system. So I'll jump back in here. So let me start. So I always, I'll share that first. Sorry. Here we go. So you've got that. So really interesting. This is what our golf looked like 20 odd years ago. One operator sitting in a little room out the back of out of things, and that was kind of interesting. So this is what it looks like today. So if we were going back to do golf, these are all people working for us. So imagine the risks and the challenges of social distancing, of traveling these people around the world, getting them in or out of the world. So, and then if I jump down to here is what they do. So this is Ben working on a computer in that truck. So that's going from the truck across the OB, sort of 50 meters or so to another broadcast truck that's actually putting this out to the world. So what happens if you can't do that? Well, here is the current setup. So this is John Rendell's room. He just sent me this photo. So that's his setup there. That's the computer. That's this. So now imagine that the golf is happening up in the States right now. This room is now linked with the OB truck in the States. John has comms to the director and producer from his house out in St Kilda. And here is the example he sent through last night. So you have to excuse the vision, but on the left-hand side, this would be John operating, I mean, this is just a video running, but this would be John operating his machine here. On this side, you'll see when I play it, how quickly this image video is going to the truck in America and coming back to us to see it. So there changes. So the left-hand side is John doing the golf here in New Zealand. The right-hand side is that having traveled to America through the truck and come back to us in our room here in Dunedin. And I'll just stop sharing that and come back to you. And hopefully that horrible noise will stop in a minute. That's John. Oh, actually, I'll go to the next one. That'll stop it. Oops. Now, yeah, there we go. So that's, I mean, I guess, there are a number of things happening there. That internet highway could not have happened. The ability to work remotely and develop all of those technologies. So there's been a team of 5 people working from 5 different houses, locations in Dunedin, together with the CBS technical people up in New York or LA or wherever they are. We've had the advantage of Gigatown down here, which means that working between the houses has been easy. But also we're seeing that highway straight up to the world. And so 2 weeks ago, you could not do that, or we couldn't do it. And we talk about the future. This idea of operating remotely was always on our to-do list because of our sustainability strategy, which was my carbon footprint is horrendous. Our carbon footprint is enormous. We have crews flying to a different country, somewhere in the world, every week. And that had to stop. If we didn't stop it, Mother Nature would stop it someday. And so this was always on the list. COVID has helped us, given us the time to accelerate it, and it will be the way we start to work through the future now. Already we're talking about doing remote operations into Australia for the first cricket that starts in August. And, you know, so there's two sides to this. A, it's going to save money, but B, it will have a huge impact on the way we, you know, the way we travel, the way we look after that carbon footprint. And I think it's really, really important moving forward that, you know, I talk about Papa Tūnuku, Mother Earth. You know, I'm always amazed to hear that we're at war with a silent enemy, COVID, or Mother Nature, basically. You know, we're not at war with her at all. You know, in that whole Māori worldview, Mataranga Māori, we should be at one with nature. We are part of this. And if we think we're going to get into a fight with Papa Tūnuku, the one thing we can be absolutely certain of is we will lose that fight. You know, you remember 65 million years ago, a meteorite hit the planet and wiped out every living being on land that weighed more than 25 kgs. Didn't affect Papa Tūnuku. Here she is 65 million years later, and here we are. So one of the things, even in the business context, that we can learn from Papa Tūnuku and from COVID is the lesson she's telling us. You know, I mean, how wonderful has it been to walk out into the streets and hear the bird song because you can't hear the cars? How wonderful has it been to see that the breathable air even in our cities has improved enormously. Papa Tūnuku, Mother Earth, is showing us what she does if we play our part. And what she does, she is doing very, very fast. You know, we take a look at the factories that were closed down in China. So everybody's excited. And India, I can see the Himalayas. Fantastic. Mother Earth did that. Nature did that. We closed down the factories. She cleaned up the air for us. Now, the question is, when we open, are we going to reopen those factories driven with fossil fuel and do what we did before? And more importantly, over this past 4 weeks, you know, ask yourself, what have I actually spent money on? Well, basically, you've spent it on food. I haven't actually missed spending it on other things. Life goes on. So what did those factories make? Well, to a very large extent, they made things that we didn't really need, and they made things that we ended up throwing into our oceans, which is why we have a plastic island the size of Mexico somewhere out there in the Atlantic. So Mother Nature's giving us all sorts of lessons from COVID. Let's not think we're at war with her. Let's step back and listen to her.
Great, that's a great, some great insights and views, and certainly I think from a New Zealand perspective, clearly we have the government is looking at a big spend, a big investment fiscally. From that perspective, you've talked about the sustainability aspects. You know, New Zealand's traditional sectors have been agriculture and tourism. How do you see that dynamic changing if we embrace perhaps a more balanced approach to our economy and the growth and sustainability aspects? What does that look like? And you know, it would seem that your company and there's others in New Zealand who are doing great things in terms of technology. It is a growing sector. So what does our economy look like, do you believe, going forward, assuming that we do embrace this Maori worldview and try to get a more balanced approach to how we drive the economy?
Well, you know, I mean, the Maori worldview is one side, but I mean, the future for New Zealand has always been really clear, I think, and you know, we tend to divide technology off as something in its own right. I mean, from my perspective, technology has never been anything other than a tool, and it applies, you know. And if you look at, I mean, you know, the people who are watching today, it would be very, very unusual to think that there would be anyone out there who isn't actually running a technology business. You know, farmers run a technology business. Fonterra is a technology business. Tourism is a technology business. So technology is at the core of everything we do. What we, if let me start with agriculture, because what has become really clear is food is the one thing in this pandemic, the one thing that didn't stop being produced is food. So what is the challenge for us here in New Zealand? We produce great food. We're shipping food out and to all around the world now. I'm part of on our Ngāti Kāngunu, we own a fisheries. We are part of the lobster things, and that all of that stuff is starting to accelerate out again. But really, I think what we have to think of is what's a different way to look at agriculture. Agriculture is really important. Food production is really important. But is it not time that we start looking at what will be the most important thing that this country offers to the world when the world starts making accelerates the making of plant-based meat? When somebody else comes up with a replacement for, I forget what it is in milk, but a replacement for milk. We as older people, I turned 70 this year, and we have this kind of sense that we look at it and go, well, hamburger's not ever going to be a hamburger if it's not made with meat. But my moko, who's just going to turn 2 in a couple of weeks, if he starts getting hamburgers that taste like hamburgers that don't come from meat, he's not going to know the difference. So we have to start moving really fast across those. And I think that technology, one of our technology focuses should be on the things that we're really strong at. So if agriculture is one of the things we're strong at, let's start pulling those things together and start looking at, we've got all of this land out there. What if we started to explore growing crops so that we didn't have so much, we weren't having the animal pollution in the air? What if we looked at the different ways of doing that? What if we accelerated the work that's being done on the seaweed that decreases the impact that cows have on our atmosphere by up to 80 to 90%? Imagine the message that sends to the world about the meat, the real meat we make. It's now coming from animals that do not pollute the air. So the market that we should, we can't feed the world. We're too small. But what we can do is feed the rich people in the world who are looking for the stuff that makes a difference. And already, the way New Zealand's handled COVID has us standing out. One of the things that we could take off the back of this is to keep this reputation now of New Zealand having dealt with this in a way, New Zealand have cleaned itself. All of these people I'm dealing with in America at Fox and all of these people, all of them are wishing they were here. All of them. And, a whole heap of them wish that, they could have Jacinda up there for a little while as well. So, we are building a reputation that will help our businesses going forward if we hold on to it and don't go racing back when we hit level 1 or level 0. Don't go racing back to business as it was before COVID. This has created a really great opportunity for New Zealand, and we need, already even at level 3, to see all of those people go out and queue up in cars for 2.5 hours to buy a McDonald's. That is not us taking advantage of the lessons we're learning for COVID. And that's what worries me most. This will go past and we will return. And just touching on tourism was already headed down, I think, the wrong path. This idea that what we wanted to do was attract millions and millions of people that the first thing that does is destroys what people came for in the first place. I've been to Venice. I've been to Venice 30 years ago. I've been to Venice recently, and it's nothing like it was. And we were headed down a track of doing exactly the same thing. We have the opportunity, and that just a bit like farming too, that they created low-value jobs. So the people who've been hit worst in tourism are the people who were working in tourism for low-paying jobs, who not only lost their jobs, but had no reserves whatsoever, because they're being paid at this base rate of whatever it was. We need to take tourism, make this place that is very difficult to get to. So it's high-end traveling in, and that we start to look at how we create high-value jobs from people coming to this special jewel on the planet.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really good point, and driving that premium that New Zealand has shown that we can do it seems to be our opportunity here. Can I take you in a different direction? And one of the things that I spoke to you about, and I'd like to just let you share with the audience, is education and the work you've done there, and particularly I suppose the pilot, I'll call it, with Dunedin Prison, in terms of giving young people in the prison the chance for education, perhaps people who have missed out from traditional schooling, and the great results you've had through that virtual reality sharing that you've got there. I think the hospitals is another example there, but I think it's just something that perhaps is just highlights the fact that there's different ways we can use technology for sharing with people and bringing people up to speed. And there's also a question we'll get onto around the inequality that perhaps the education systems had and risks having in terms of access to it through the technology as well.
So one of the things I think that COVID has done is it really has highlighted, I mean, first of all, we always had this inequality, growing inequality between the rich and poor in New Zealand, the haves and have-nots. So there was an economic gap that was there. What COVID has highlighted again, which has been around for ages, and a lot of people have been talking about it, but it is that digital divide. So, you know, the government just dumped $88 million to fire computers out to, you know, what amazes me is that they can find $88 million because COVID turned up to start addressing a problem that has been here and obvious for a very, very long time. This highway to the world, this internet, has always been as important as the physical highways governments built in the past. You know, governments built highways, they built railways, they built those things to drive the economy forward. And then somehow they managed to step back off this one because it wasn't really a physical highway, but it was as important or more important for the future of everyone, that this was a priority for everyone. This high-speed electronic highway needed to get to everyone. And so now we're seeing, I don't know, it was a horrendous number, 86,000 kids who don't even have access to the internet at home, even reduced access to it at schools. If you can find $1 billion now just out of the blue to do this, or, you know, the billions they're spending, why didn't we find it before to say this area is really, really important to balance everything up? We need to fix this now. So, you know, we're going to start down this, we'll start down this path, but, you know, the knee-jerk reaction of getting this stuff out has highlighted that even when computers have turned up, even when these kids get access to the internet, because they've never had it before, their parents are struggling with it, the kids are struggling with it. So that digital divide and those things will sit in the background. So that's one thing that, you know, we really have to address coming out of here. Fix that digital divide. You know, we mentioned the prisons. There's another thing that we've taken on, and that's the idea. You know, everyone looks at Silicon Valley as, you know, people go tromping up to Silicon Valley to see what the future is and have it. You know, one of the guys I spoke to up there who moved out of Silicon Valley did so because he said Silicon Valley represented technology for greed. He came to New Zealand because he saw an opportunity here to do technology for good. And so, you know, we think about that for a moment. So the thing we're doing in prisons, you know, we are overrepresented. Māori and Pacifica are overrepresented in prisons. And one of the reasons, a major reason for that, is they don't have numeracy and literacy. I mean, you get picked up 3 times for not having a driver's license, you're on remand, you're in with the gangs, you're in prison. You know, it's all over. And then you come out You can't read health and safety. You can't do that because you don't have numeracy and literacy. So we decided that, there was technology around that could do it. Well, we didn't. Methodist Mission here in Dunedin, they have these numeracy and literacy programs. So they came to us. So what could we do about it? And we worked together with them and have come up with this incredible use of VR, virtual reality, to engage. And the results have been really quite staggering. We didn't write a business plan. And I'm still not sure how we're going to do it. We've spent close to $1 million at the moment on getting it to this proof stage. But rather than a business plan, the idea was, technology for good. What is the why? Why are we doing this? Well, from a Māori perspective, we are misrepresented, overrepresented in prisons. Numeracy and literacy is a major reason for that. So let's use technology to fix that. And while we're fixing it, what we've found is, of course, we're fixing it for everyone in prisons. So it spreads across there. And so now we've taken it to this stage. Our hope is that now we can get in front of government to say, you want a spade-ready project. Yes, you can go digging up and building more highways and building more motorways. But what about this for a spade-ready project? That is a technology spade-ready project that says it's going to make a difference to our prisons. It's going to make a difference to our education system. And equally as important, it will create high-value jobs on the other side of the mix, because we need programmers, we need graphic designers, we need animators to create the VR experiences that are being used to teach numeracy and literacy, first in prisons, because it's the low-hanging fruit, but then bringing that out and use it for teaching, helping with dyslexic people and kids in schools, autism, all of those are gifts. Now we need to shift our system, use technology to acknowledge those gifts and bring those gifts to the surface.
Yeah, no, it's a great example of what can be done, and I certainly. I think there's a Q&A button on the screen, so if people want to ask questions. I forgot to mention that at the start. One which is linked to what you're just describing, and it's a question around the initiatives undertaken, whether there's a task force or discussions at board level on how we should come out of COVID in relation to climate change and being on the agenda. And I think it's a very good question, because what you just described resonates with a lot of other conversations I've had around the last couple of weeks, where there's a concern that we could actually go back to New Zealand as we were, rather than New Zealand as we could be. So look, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts or aware of task force that you've been invited into, but hopefully the message that you're giving us here today is getting through to the cabinet table and being heard.
I mean, as I said, I'm turning 70 this year, so the number of times that I can count that these discussions have been had and nothing has happened from it is one of the reasons we've moved off on another thing I'd like to share with you. Land of voyages. So one of the big challenges for our Māori and Pacifica, but right across the board, is this whole concept of STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math. We know it's important. What we also know is it's entirely irrelevant to our young people. What does that actually mean? And how do we, especially our Māori and Pacifica, how do we relate to that? So we've started to build a whole platform that we are gifting to schools. We raised $1 million last year. And it raised another 2 million, all privately. It's got no government funding in it, but the gift we will launch to the schools called Land of Voyages. And I'll just share the screen again, if I may, and run past what this is going to teach. So, right, so I'll bring that up so I can see it. So you're seeing a picture of the world there?
I am, yes.
Okay, so when you type into your computer the map of human migration, that's what you get, that picture there. So it's really interesting, because there's this big hunk here in the middle called Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, the Pacific Ocean, which covers 1/3 of the planet. And there's not a single trace of human migration in this space. The space is so big it could take every continent in the world. Really interestingly, it could also take Mars, the place that we're thinking of going to next. But actually, in this picture, there is no recognition whatsoever of the incredible migration of our Polynesian ancestors who crossed this ocean and began that journey at the same time that the Egyptians were building the pyramids. This is how Goldie perceived Maori or Polynesians arriving in New Zealand. They could not have come here on purpose. I mean, they're a bunch of savages, had no knowledge. How could they cross a planet, an ocean that's a third of the planet? They must have been blown here in a storm. So that is the background of science, technology, and engineering and math for Māori and Pacifica. I mean, what? It's got no relevance because, after all, we're this kind of dumb group of people. When, in fact, as I said before, that journey began just out of Asia there. Same time that the Egyptians were building the pyramids, they made it all the way to Rarotonga, Samoa. They spent 2,000 years here designing craft that would cover a state-of-the-art craft that allowed them to do this. One of the fastest migrations in the history of mankind, all the way to Hawaii, across to South America, where they picked up the kumara, and down to south to Aotearoa itself. So that is an amazing story that remained untold. How did they do it? They did not do this. That discovery across the Pacific Ocean was intentional, it was planned, and it was the equivalent of man going to the moon. So I've got here now. This is the state-of-the-art craft that were designed by the Polynesians to travel across the Pacific Ocean. And just recently, I'll just move this up. Last year, so that's India Bellini. So India is a 25-year-old Tahitian wahine who skippered the whawhaiti that came from Tahiti to New Zealand last year as part of the Tuia 250 celebrations. This is the journey she made on that boat using nothing but the stars, the sun, and the ocean currents to get her here. We used multi-million-dollar sky full of satellites, tracking things we put on there to track her just to see how she did. Well, in 3.5 weeks, she nailed it. She sailed from Tahiti to the mouth of Tauranga using the stars, the sun, and the ocean currents. And that is the basis upon which we have built this story, this platform that is going to go into schools. We have 78 stories. We're working with Education Perfect to develop these lessons that share with all kids that the voyage of human migration began out of Africa 65 million years or so ago, 65,000 years ago. And when you use the Māori worldview and look at all of those footsteps that lay out in front of us, it means that all of the footsteps that began in Africa, as we look out to them, ended here in Aotearoa. So the very last footsteps in the story of human migration were here to these shores. So that is something we were never taught, and it is a lesson that is really valuable to us, because that means all of the knowledge that was taken up in that voyage. So, Captain Cook came round from the top. We came round from the bottom, but we all came from the same source. So if any country in the world should understand every culture in the world, it's ours. And we think that that's an important lesson to share with our young kids, so that when you're sitting at the table, your little Chinese mate there, he was on the same journey that you were. His ancestors just stopped in China for a little bit longer. Your Indian, we are all in this waka together. So this is a really powerful lesson that comes from the science of Mātauranga, which is the view of the universe, the Polynesian or the indigenous people's view of the universe, where we are at one with it, all of it. So if we can start to bring the concept of Mātauranga into our schools, science, technology, engineering, and math sit under that umbrella, We're working with Science Alive out of Christchurch, who are helping to fund all of this. And they're doing it because we've explained to them that the concept of mātauranga is science alive. It's living science. It's everything that is around you, which is why we want to share this as one of the core subjects for our young people. We've done it without the Ministry of Education. We've done it without any government money, and it will be in schools when everyone goes back to school in 6 or 7 weeks. It will be there, and it will be available forever for free. And just closing. So this is just a little piece. So imagine, think of it, at the beginning of the 2U250 voyage, we joined the Whawhaiti and we travelled down with it, the 4,000 kilometres. We sailed around New Zealand with the Waka Haurua. This is a very small part of the last video we made on that journey. There are 70 of them. This is the very closing, but I want to share it with everybody. Look at the power of the young Māori girls in here, and look at the way they view our future together. And when you see that, I'm sure you can't help but be hugely encouraged by what these young people are going to bring to our future. So here we go.
We're all responsible for what we have, the entire world, and to keep it going on for the next generation. It's not like just a Māori or Pacific responsibility to protect, but it's whoever lives in it, and it's all the other oceans, that we're all connected. It's just, where is that connection? And I think that's what Tuia has done for us, is started the conversations in terms of where we can find this connection and how we can build on those connections.
This is where it ends. At a new beginning, Mahia, the very first place to see the light of day, and now ship with Pākehā, a place where today's state-of-the-art waka will be sent back to the very stars that brought us here. Isn't it amazing how far we've come and how far we can still go?
So, just to kind of wrap things up there, it's why, this was made, of course, before COVID, but, the comments that they made about what 2U250 did was to start those connections. It's incredible that in such a short time after that, COVID hit us as well. And COVID is doing exactly the same thing. It is reminding us of those connections. It's reminding us of how important they are.
That's fantastic, Ian. I think there's some great messages there, and I think certainly the one around the fact that we all come here from somewhere, and the innovation that it took for people to get here from where they've come. Certainly, I think if we embrace that, then our future is very bright. And I think certainly what you just shared with us, and the fact that it's in our schools, the future of education could be something quite inspiring. A lot of children struggle with the pace of learning in a classroom, with the distractions in the classroom. The future of learning could well be something where the teacher is an avatar and the child is taught at their own pace, which would be hugely valuable for most children, I imagine. So it's pretty exciting sort of seeing what is available now and the fact that it's been rolled out in our schools. So certainly thank you for sharing.
It's just one of the another thing that's kind of I talked before about the kind of productivity and the way that the future of jobs can change, and we are really determined now that we are going to take these lessons, that when we come out of COVID, the idea that you are being paid to look after yourself and your family has got to stay. We need to slow things down. We need to start to recognize that there is more to life than thundering off to work and, having to, be there at a certain time. I mean, what will continue to pay our people for is to look after their people as well. And it's interesting because I think already, we were in the midst of a full rebuild of our offices here in Dunedin, and they'd been designed in a special way, and the place is a mess at the moment, so COVID couldn't have hit at a better time with us all working from home. But already we're reconfiguring the place we call our office, and now there's going to be this kind of big central place where people can come and go when they feel they need to get together as a group. But getting together as a group isn't what work is necessarily about. Getting stuff done is what it's about, and getting it, and you don't measure people, you don't measure that output by the number of hours someone spent sitting at a desk. You measure it by the quality of the work that comes from that person. And what we're seeing is that if you let them breathe and take space and live a life, the quality of that work has improved. Now, it's very difficult for me to say this about my team because the team is amazing anyway, but the quality of the work is stunning. It has not suffered from being at home. And what has changed is that people are, the life that people are living is way better.
No, absolutely, and I think that's probably something that we've all learned over the last few weeks. To be honest, if someone said in January you're going to be all working from home, I would have thought it was almost impossible. And look, I think certainly there's some challenges with that, but I think certainly the point you make is around productivity isn't about sitting at a desk or
and just going back to Papatūānuku just once more, what would worry me, and I'm starting to see it already, is that I'm starting to see people talking about now, I hope those climate change people don't start thinking, we've got to get our economy back, we've got to get it running and think. COVID is one step before the impacts that climate change might have had, and one of the, and it would be really, really disappointing if our drive to get back to business as usual puts climate change and the impact of that to one side, because it is still going on. And I guess the message Papatūānuku sent us was that, so as clever as you weren't able to find a way to ground over 2/3 of your aircraft. So I did it for you. So she showed us how to do that, but more importantly, she showed us the results to the environment and the place we live when she did it. So as I said, my carbon footprint is coming down enormously from here on in, because I've seen that we don't need to do it. And the other side of it is she's probably taught us a little bit about consumerism. Those factories that closed down, that meant the air in China got breathable again. Probably 70 or 80% of them was making stuff we did not need and stuff we would ultimately throw away to our detriment and to Papatūānuku's detriment.
Fantastic. And look, we've covered a lot of ground, and I think that's a great message to end up on, although I'm getting a few questions coming through. And one which follows on from the theme around sustainability, and it's really around, I'll read it out to you, is sustainable opportunities. What sustainable opportunities do you see for New Zealand if we can effectively get to a zero COVID cases? And I mean, you've touched on the importance of that very point around not going back to where we were, and but where are the opportunities? I imagine the opportunities are, as you put, around the using technology across all our industries and also the new ways of working. But I'll see if you've got some other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, so let's look at the value of agriculture, that has always been here for the country. And, I'm always disappointed even when I hear technology people, sort of putting farming and agriculture to one side because the future is technology. Well, actually, what if we That's true. But what if we really start to apply technology to that thing that has been so strong for us, so powerful, and we bring a sustainability focus to it, so we know what damages the wrong. I use damage because I can't think of another word. We know the impact of our agricultural practices have had on the environment, but let's be really clear that that's not the fault of farmers. That's all of us. We are the ones who buy the food, buy the plant. We're the ones who storm through the supermarkets, and then so it's not farmers have delivered what we have asked for, and in a way, there's all of these unintended consequences that they could never have known were going to happen. So now, I guess, if we are to take a message from this for sustainability, we've seen the impact of those, and we should be truly prioritizing how does technology ensure that this food basket of the world that we could be is sustainable and producing high level, high value products for that top end market. And the work that's being done on the seaweed should be accelerated. I don't know why government and investors haven't just gone, yes, it might be a long shot, but honestly, if you could reduce that carbon emission from animals by 90%, that is the equivalent of refrigerated shipping to the world for our agricultural industry. That's just one example. I guess another example about sustainability is what if we were, as businesses, to start making sure that our staff are able to work more and more from home, so that suddenly, if we even removed 15% of the cars that have people travelling to work, parking them up for 8 to 10 hours and travelling home, what if we found ways to ease those roads up in that that's sustainable as well? So they're just a couple of examples.
And just to wrap up, one of the topics which I think is dear to all our hearts, and I imagine yours as well, and that is one of sport. And we talked about the disruption of sports competitions. We're seeing a lot of virtual sports, even motor racing on taking off.
Incredible.
It is incredible. What does it mean for sport? Is there a risk that we end up all being couch sports stars in the future? How does that play out? And I suppose it seems that tech disruption can happen in any industry, and sport included. But what's your prognosis for the future of sport?
So, esports has always been hovering in the background, and the last couple of years, it has really accelerated. I think it's important that we distinguish between those. When I was trying to describe to sports producers, they'd look at esports and go, don't understand this. That's not real sports. That's not this. But actually, when you come back to why do we sit and watch sports? Why do we sit and watch Djokovic play tennis, for example? It's because he is at the top of his game. Our why for doing sports graphics is always really there's two of them. The first one was, the reason we're going to do sports graphics is we're going to remind you sitting at home watching this person sitting up, playing up here. We're going to remind you why you're sitting on the couch and he's the one doing the playing. So we're going to celebrate his excellence. So we watch these people for their excellence. Now, that's what people are doing with e-games. These people who are keyboarding and doing this are at the top of their game. And so again, fans of esports and e-games are going to be attracted to competitions where they see the best in the world. So it's not a surprise. We're working on a whole different idea that says, what if there's a middle ground between esports and real sports? So always real players, always real fields, always that, but we actually surround them with virtual environments that change the viewing experience for the people back home watching. And we have an enormous opportunity here, which is what we're working on down at the stadium, about as soon as we can get out of lockdown into the stadium. One of the big challenges for sports is going to be crowdless stadium. And they could be crowdless for some time to come. So what do we do with all that empty space around the playing field? So we've already started work for the stadium here that says, right, everything that happens on is exactly as you expected it. It's covered the same way, real players doing the real thing. But you're not going to be very excited by looking out there to see a stadium full of empty seats. So we're already designing virtual things that increase your involvement from home, different virtual environments that cover up the empty seats. So now no longer is the stadium empty, it's got a whole lot of other things going on in it. And our target is, now that we've removed the people, what opportunities does it give us to enhance the viewing of the people at home? One of the biggest handicaps or obstacles for us to be able to do all we would love to do at a sports events have been the crowds. They get in the road, they sit where you need to put cameras, they sit where you'd like to fly a drone. They actually get in the road. And when you think about it, the number of people I saw a number for Real Madrid, and something like 0.02% of their fan base has ever seen them playing live. The experience is always on screens. So what if we take this opportunity to go, yep, we still have the stadiums. What if we do get rid of the people? What if we create a different environment so that the millions of people, not the thousands or the hundreds that are at the game, the millions of people are getting a way more engaging experience? What if we were able to do VR on the field that would be impossible to do in a stadium that had people in it? What if, the what ifs are enormous. And it just comes back to this idea that, I'm a client of my own. I sit and watch sports. So it's really easy. We sit here and look at this stuff and go, gee, it'd be great if we could see, but those people get in the road. Well, now we've just got rid of them. So there's an opportunity.
Fantastic. Look, Ian, always fascinating to hear what you're working on and to get your perspectives. And thank you so much for sharing them. I do hope that your voice gets heard because clearly, the insights you bring and the mana that you have in New Zealand is great. So thank you once again. Really appreciate your time and good luck going forward. We look forward to seeing the enhanced sporting experiences. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you too. And I remember the first discussion we had about this. I said, God, how are we going to talk for an hour? We've done it.
I don't think that's ever a problem. I can remember the first time you dropped by and kind of had a cup of coffee, and it felt like 10 minutes, and we were there for an hour then as well. So,
thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of those thoughts, and I hope hope there's something in there for somebody.